We are going to be reading Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and the Rescue Dog. So way up north in Christmastown, there were families of reindeers. Families of reindeers, like families of huskies, Steve, except they were reindeers. Okay, do you want to come up here? Come on. Come on. Oh my goodness. Oh. Okay, now we can read. No, you're not getting the treats back there, you little stinker. Yes, you're so cuddly for a treat, aren't you? I don't have anything. Okay, so there were elves working in the factory making presents for children. And in Santa's castle, I didn't know Santa had a castle, but all right, that's all right. Mrs. Claus makes sure he eats plenty so the holiday suit fits just right. See, we've been eating lots of cookies, lots of cupcakes. I mean, get ready for this. And everyone loves living in Christmastown, except for one year, the weather was so bad that Christmas was almost canceled. One spring, Donner, the lead reindeer who helped pull Santa's sleigh, Stephen, Santa's sleigh is not down there. You're not going to get it. Santa's sleigh is like way out there. Way, way far away. Probably sounds like a husky sled too. And one spring, Donner, the lead reindeer, who helped pull Santa's sleigh each Christmas, became a proud papa. He and his wife, oh, Steve's leaving us. Steven, are you bored? Are you bored already? Everybody else is bored too. Hope you guys aren't bored. And soon after, little Rudolph was born, and his tiny red nose began to glow. It was like a little light bulb, Steve. Kind of like when you actually have a thought. You don't have any, do you? No, Steven doesn't have any thoughts. Steve just cuddles. He's an interesting husky, aren't you? Yes. Are you a good boy? You are a good boy. Okay. Great bouncing icebergs, exclaimed Santa when he saw this. If Rudolph's nose continues to blow, Santa said, he would never make the sleigh team when he grew up. He's like the reject. Donner taught Rudolph all of the things a young reindeer needed to know, especially to beware of the abominable monster. All while he hid Rudolph's nose under a cover and hoped that someday it would stop glowing. As the months went on, the elves were busy making Christmas toys, and all the elves were working away. Here, look, see, they're working. They all worked away, except for Hermie. Hermie just didn't have a knack for making toys. But maybe that's because someday he dreamed of being a vet tech. This made him feel like a misfit with his fellow elves, because they just wanted to make toys, and Hermie, he liked animals, and he wanted to help animals and be a vet tech, and maybe even someday be a veterinarian. Now Rudolph, he felt like a misfit too. And his little nose and the cover made him sound funny, but without it, his nose glowed so brightly, but Donner was determined to keep it a secret. Don't want to tell anybody about that nose, right, Steve? Just I don't want anybody to know you're a reject, huh? Yes, you're a reject. Okay, so one day the annual reindeer games is kind of like you going to the dog park acting like a lunatic. Rudolph met Clarice, a really pretty young doe. You haven't met a Clarice yet, Steve. No, you really haven't. Someday. Someday you will. Rudolph was so excited he flew through the air with joy. Flying was exactly what Comet the coach was trying to teach all the young reindeer, and was amazed at Rudolph until his nose cover came off. Really? All the other reindeer, except for Clarice, Stephen, they laughed at him. Stephen, do you know that that's what everyone does? When dogs see you, they laugh at you. They make fun of you and they laugh at you because you're so silly. They do. Okay, you don't believe me. Comet said, from now on, we won't let Rudolph join in these reindeer games. Rudolph went off by himself. See, socialization is so important, isn't it, Steve? At the toy factory, Hermie was having trouble too. He skipped elf practice so he could fix the toy animals' little legs and feet and things like that, thinking that someday he might fit in better that way. But when the foreman found out, he yelled, "Come to elf practice and learn to wiggle your ears and chuckle warmly and do important stuff like that, or you'll never fit in." But Hermie just couldn't, and he ran away instead. Before long, Hermie and Rudolph, they met and shared their stories. It's kind of like the random dog and then the other random dog, and they end up in the shelter and they meet in a little kennel. It's like that, Steve. Did you know? It is. It's like that. Okay. Steve's very comfy right now. On their first day, they heard the abominable snow monster's terrible growl. "He must have seen your nose," cried Hermie. The two friends tried to stay far ahead of the monster. Soon, they met Yukon Cornelius. You guys are going to like this part. I'm going to double check to make sure we're still working right. I'm sorry, because I can't see it. Oh, look at that. We have 15 whole people that have nothing else better to do on a Thursday night but listen to me read a story to my dog. Okay, but we're going to go with it anyway. So soon they met Cornelius and his dog sled team. Yukon was looking for a building to start a rescue, but he found Rudolph and Hermie instead. Then Rudolph's glowing nose let the abominable snow monster find them all. Thanks to Yukon's quick thinking, they escaped on an icy floe, like a little block of ice. See, they're floating. It's called a floe, Steve. It is. Okay. The ice floe carried them to the island of misfit dogs, a place filled with odd dogs. Stephen, you kind of belong on Misfit Island. In fact, I think this is Misfit Island. I really do. But anyway, just going to go with it, Steve. All right. The ruler of the island, King Moonracer, that's a name. I should have called you Moonracer, Stephen. A dog is never truly happy until they are loved by a child and a family. Rudolph promised the king that someday he would tell Santa about all the homeless dogs. Maybe Santa would include them in his Christmas deliveries to the children around the world. I don't know about that, Steve. We want to make sure they're qualified homes. Maybe Santa can get applications on all the dogs, and then they can find the right home. Not necessarily for Christmas, but we'll work through it, Steve. We'll work through it. We'll talk to Cornelius. We'll get it worked out. So Rudolph asked King Moonracer if he had friends, if he and his friends could stay on the island of misfit dogs. "This island is not fit for living things like you," said the king. "It is only for misfit dogs." "How do you like that?" said Yukon. "Even in the misfits, we're a misfit." The king let the friends rest overnight. Before they moved on, when Hermie and Yukon were fast asleep, Rudolph slipped away. It sounds like a husky that got out. Yeah. Knowing that his nose would put them in constant danger from the abominable snow monster. He didn't want to be the cause of any harm to his friends. The abominable snow monster did indeed find Rudolph because of his glowing nose. He chased the young reindeer everywhere, and during that time, Rudolph grew up. He's been chasing him for a long time, Steve. It's kind of like when you don't want to come back in the house and I'm trying to get you in. Yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah. One day he realized it was time to go home. Meanwhile, Rudolph's parents and Clarice had been out looking for him ever since he left. It was now 2 days before Christmas Eve, and Santa told Rudolph, not you, Rudolph, that without Donner, he'd never be able to get his sleigh off the ground. Rudolph was determined to find his parents and Clarice. As he began to look for them, the storm of all storms hit. Thick snowflakes fell, making it hard to see. Stephen, I wonder if they do like forecasts there. You know? I do. I wonder if they use forecasts. And I wonder if those, they like, get all like panic, and they like board up windows, kind of like we do for hurricanes here. Yeah, this is the only thing you care about, Steve. You only care about food. If you were Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, we would put a stick over your head and dangle the food out in front of you. So then, you could like, you know, do something. Come over here. Sit. You gotta be a good dog. Sit. All the way. That's a good boy. Okay, Lucas. There you go. All right. So, Rudolph and the storms and meteorologists and stuff like that. Okay. So then, Rudolph had an idea where his parents and Clarice were. In the cave of the abominable snow monster. He made his way there despite the storm and found Clarice in the monster's place. Don't go near her, Rudolph cried. The abominable snow monster growled and then turned and growled at Rudolph instead. But Yukon and Hermie, the vet tech and the rescue guide Yukon, who had been searching for their friend, arrived at the cave just in time. And they lured the monster outside with treats. Then Hermie and Yukon got close to the dog, and Hermie realized, Stephen's like doing whatever. Hermie realized that the monster was just a really shaggy dog with big mats all over it, and it was growling because it was scared of people and it had a sore tooth. So Hermie helped out the dog, and then they got the tooth pulled. But then the monster was scared and it took off running, and Yukon ran after the monster until both of them looked like they had fallen off the edge of a cliff. Stephen, what are you doing back there? Rudolph and his friends and family were heartbroken when they returned to Christmas Town. When others heard the entire story, they realized that those who were different are important too. They saw all the misfit dogs and they were very excited. They all apologized to Rudolph and Hermie, and the foreman even told Hermie he could even open up a dog rescue or a vet's office right there in Santa's Town to take care of the reindeer and stuff like that. Steve, do you believe they weren't taking care of the reindeer? I mean, I think they were, but I think they needed a vet and a vet tech. So Hermie's really happy. But just then there was a knock on the door, and it was Yukon and all of his dogs and the abominable snow monster. But he got grooming, and he got a haircut and his nails trimmed, and he was just a big fluffy dog. Probably you if you were like out there abandoned and everywhere. Yes, just like you. The abominable snow monster was actually fine, and he was really friendly now that he felt safe with Yukon. Now the monster was no longer mean because he's not scared anymore, Steve. You're a mess. He even helped them move things around and decorate the Christmas tree. The next day was Christmas Eve, but the weather was so bad that Santa could not fly his sleigh safely through it. They're still flying sleighs. Yeah. Like airplanes and flying saucers, they don't do that stuff. He reluctantly started to tell everyone that Christmas was going to be canceled. Stephen, what would you do? I'm going to make you put these back on. What would you do if Christmas was canceled, Stephen? What would you do? What would you do, huh? You wouldn't get any stuff. No, you wouldn't get any stuff. You make it very hard to read. Okay, so then Santa had an idea. Rudolph, you know that wonderful nose of yours. You left your antlers, Rudolph. Stephen. Yes, you left them. Okay. Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight, Rudolph? And Rudolph said, I would be honored, sir. And then the sleigh was loaded, and the reindeer got into place, and Santa climbed aboard. Rudolph took the lead, and the sleigh took off. Santa's first stop, the island of misfit dogs. Everyone had an extra Merry Christmas that year, and Rudolph went down in history as the greatest reindeer of all time. That was a really short story, Steve. It really was. I think I have an idea. So, let's check and make sure that we still have people's attention, because, you know, there's people on there. Oh, look at that. We have 14 whole people. Wait, hold on. Stephen, I have an idea. So, there is a Christmas song. Stephen, you've been hearing me sing Christmas songs all week. Ever since Thanksgiving. Yes, I feel sorry for you. So there's this one Christmas song that happens to be my favorite Christmas song. And I remember growing up, let me see if I can pull up the lyrics on this on my fancy little iPad here. And, you know, it wasn't the most popular Christmas song. I think they made it into like one of those animated little movies, things like that. It was okay. The movie was okay. But the song, you know, it's not even the most popular Christmas song. Let's see if we can find it. Here we go, Steve. I think I found it. Okay. It wasn't even the most popular song, but all of us knew it. But it was one of those things that, to me, really meant a lot. Stephen, did it mean a lot to you? I don't think it meant a lot to you. So, the song story that always meant a lot to me was The Little Drummer Boy. And it's just a cute little song, and I remember being really, really young. I'm sure all of us were really young when we first heard it. And you know, the way this song went, it really didn't seem like it meant that much. You know, it's interesting, if you Google the story and you try to look and see who wrote it and where it originated, it's interesting because it's actually a really old song, and it is they have a hard time pinning down who actually originally wrote the song. So, you know, that's whatever. I mean, I don't know. It's not like it's a conspiracy theory or anything like that, but so, you know, the way the song goes, you know, come they told me, rum-bum-bum-bum, a newborn king to see, rum-bum-bum-bum. And we talk about how we're bringing our finest gifts, and you have the kings, and they're bringing their silver and their gold, and they're bringing the finest gifts they can for the newborn king, for baby Jesus. And they want to lay them down before the king to honor him. And the little drummer boy's doing his little drumming thing, and he's drumming along and all happy. And then he gets up to the little baby, and he says to baby Jesus, you know, I have no gift to bring. I just know how to play my drum. And he says, you know, shall I play for you? And Mary, she nods, and he played his little heart out. And little baby Jesus smiled. And you know, that's pretty much the song. I mean, it wasn't like it was that big of a deal, but, you know, it meant a lot to me because I remember as a kid, you know, thinking to myself how interesting it was that, decimal boy. How interesting it was that, you know, there's such a short little story about how, you know, these kings and this and that, and they're bringing their silver and their gold and all this stuff, and you have this, you know, little poor boy, and all he can do is play his drums. But I always would think about how that, you know, the little boy was doing what he was most passionate about. He was using the gifts that were given to him to play the drum, his affinity for music, and so on. And out of all the gifts that were given, that was the gift of himself. That was the gift of his passion. And he gave the best of what he had as a gift. And out of the one gift, he gets the little smile out of baby Jesus. And I remember as a little boy, like, thinking to myself that, you know, I wanted to be the little drummer boy. I'm sure a lot of us wanted to be the little drummer boy. But interestingly enough, that story has always been a real inspiration to me, in the sense that I've always felt like that we are, you know, in service to the Almighty, and the Almighty created everything and everyone. So in essence, we're in service to Him and all of His creations. And, you know, that's all the people, that's everything. And it's humbling to think that we're in service to. Granted, you know, we have these wild beasts like this thing, right, Steve? That I think we're more in service to them than they are to us. And I'm okay with that. But it was interesting as almost like an inspiration as I grew up, and even to this day, that whenever I do anything, when I talk to anyone, work with their dogs and so on, I'm always trying to give the best. I'm always trying to give the best of me that I possibly can. And, you know, it's been a long year. It's been interesting. And I know there's been a lot of different things going on for a lot of different people in a lot of places. And I think this Christmas season, the more that all of us can find ways to give the best of this belly. Do you like the belly, Steve? I like the belly, Steve. Yes, I do.
Oh, I like the belly, Steve. Yes, I like the belly.
The more that we can give the best of ourselves, oh, you're gonna play. The more that we can give the best of ourselves to one another, I think that can really make a difference. You know, it's not always about the silver, it's not always about the gold, it's about giving of ourselves and doing what we can for as many people as we can in the time that I feel we all really need it the most. So I appreciate everybody joining in with Steve and I this week for a silly little Rudolph story. Next week we're going to do, what are we going to do, Steve? Are we going to do the scary Christmas Carol next week? Are we going to do it? I think we are. So next week, Steve and I will sit down and we'll take a little bit longer. We're going to read A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And I think it'll be really fun. At least it's something to do. And, you know, not sharing a ton of dog training wisdom, but hopefully helping to share a little bit of joy and a little bit of silliness and Rudolph and the rescue dog stuff. In a time of year when we should be sharing all of ourselves with each other. So thank you all very much for taking the time out of your evening to spend some silly time with Steve and myself. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. It was kind of fun.